meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Matt Barker, Justin Orff,
Here.
Scott Perryman,
Here.
Aaron Peterson,
Here.
Darlene Graham. Here. Jared Giddens.
Here. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we will open up the visitor section. Who would like to speak this evening can do so at this time.
Mayor and council, we have two people signed up this evening. First one is Ron Sanders.
Mr. Sanders.
Good evening. Want to make sure this is working.
Is the audio working?
Oh, there we go. Now it's
There you
working. We don't want to have that boom happen again like one meeting. My name's Ron Sanders, 976 Glen Oaks Drive, here in Nixa. And I'm here to talk about something that's not pleasant. We were all here back in July whenever the vote was taken to not have a mask ordinance. We were all here when the voice of the people was moved to the end of the meeting instead of the front of the meeting, in what my opinion was to quiet people down, to silence people. We were all here, well, some of us were here whenever the question was asked, and the mayor said that he had no intention of enacting a mask mandate on his own. It is my opinion that a legislative body, and I think that this can be upheld through hundreds of years of governance throughout our country, that a legislative body should not give legislative powers to the executive branch. There was no emergency where something couldn't be discussed. There was no emergency that was so dire that people were going to die within a 24-hour period that emergency declarations had to be made for a 6-month or 8-month period. And even after that declaration was made, even after that legislation, or whatever you want to call it, a mandate was made, there was time for the legislators, the city council members, to come back and hear the people and revisit that and either enact it through a proper vote or vote it down again. Why it didn't happen is on y'all's conscience. But this continuous move away from the norms of how government should be governing and how y'all should be serving is why the petition to recall the mayor has been out there and is being signed. Okay? There are a lot of people in our community that are saying that the petitioners are causing the city to pay a whole bunch of money for this upcoming election for the recall if it happens. No, sir. I'm here to say that this recall is happening not because of our actions, but because of the city council and the mayor's actions. I've been in here every city council meeting to share my advice, to share my wisdom, to share my knowledge, to be as nice as I could, to help my community go in the right direction. To be vilified for that is wrong. And there are people out there that are doing that right now on your behalf. And that is wrong also. Now, I know that it cuts both ways. and I have refrained from being as inflammatory as I could be. But I'm here right now just to face all of y'all and tell you what's going on and what people have talked to me about and what people are supporting. It's not that that people don't want to wear the mask. It's not that people are anti-mask. It's the people saw their government, their local government, doing something very dangerous, very out of the normal, and something that should not stand and should not be allowed to happen again. Y'all are on the city council to make those hard decisions, to make those hard
30
votes
seconds.
as legislators.
You started,
And the
started
mayor-
a little late. Let him go on.
And the mayor is here to be the executive, along with the city administrator. That's how it should be. And in the end, that's how it should go from here forward. Should there be a vote, once there is a vote, and the results of that vote. It's y'all's. Y'all made this home rule. I'm just following it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Anyone any questions for Mr. Sanders? Thank you, sir.
Next up is
Next
Mr.
speaker, please.
Belcher.
Mr. Belcher.
I'm going to kind of reiterate what Ron said there, that this kind of falls at your guys' lap. I've given you every opportunity. I've literally begged each and every one of you to put it for a vote again. It can be rescinded by a vote. A simple vote. That's what you are here to do, all of you. You're not here to sit and stare off wildly at the sky. Do your jobs, vote. That's what being a leader is. If you want to be a leader, look it up. As far as this whole pandemic reaction, I don't think you've displayed any leadership ability at all. Your town came around, 40-some people showed up, city council voted it down unanimously. We know this. You enacted your magic pen after your meeting with the hospital directors, the mayor of Ozark, and I wonder where your leadership comes in. A leader's not afraid to go out and do something you're supposed to do. Listen to your constituents. Listen to your council. Not just shush them to the side, move them to the back of a meeting so they don't have the opportunity to speak without sitting here for sometimes 3.5 hours. It's ridiculous. That's an abuse of power. That's kind of how your leadership in this pandemic began, was following the leader. You followed Cox, you followed Mercy, you followed the mayor of Springfield, you followed the mayor of Ozark. And I'll be damned if you didn't do it again. The day after the mayor of Ozark got voted out, probably because of his mandate, you come out the very next day, oh, we're going to lift our mandate. Is that leadership, or is that more following the leader? Looks to me like more like we're following the leader. Well, what's this guy doing? We're going to do what he does. Did you think to put it for a vote? Do it the proper way, the legislative way, the way you folks all put it into our home charter, the way it should be done? No. You did what you wanted. That's a bully. That's not a leader. Roll your eyes, that's fine. I probably would too, but it's the truth of the matter. The day after he's elected, you make your announcement you're going to lift the mandate. And guess what day it's getting lifted? The day he leaves office? The day the new mayor of Nixa, or Ozark, comes in and says, you know what, this mandate is trash, it's gone. It's like, who's chasing who? It's the cat chasing the tail here. We're following, you know. Be a leader. It's not that hard. It's not very comfortable sometimes, but when you've got a city of people that voted you in to do your job, do it. You don't snub your nose at them and say, oh, I've got a magic pen, I can do what I want, because council gave me that option. Which that would be something I think we can probably address later, is maybe make sure that option is not on the table to split and divide our city once again. Because you pretty well split it right down the middle, and we told you guys this was coming. I don't know if you watch all the Facebook posts, the groups, it's getting pretty nasty out there. People are passionate about this. They feel violated on one side of the coin. On the other side of the coin, well, let's listen to our leader. Do they really know what's going on with our leader? He's a follower. He's following everybody else's directives. That's not leadership. Hence the recall petition that was put in place by the home charter for us citizens in instances just like this. We feel your power has been abused, and there's no end in sight. There's no leadership. It's even when even when you're ending this, you're still doing what everybody else is doing. Your buddy in Ozark got voted out. Okay, so now we better do something. Well, what a better day than the day Ozarks gets lifted. That way we're doing the exact same thing and nobody looks like the bad guy or the good guy. Do you see the two sides there? Same person, same decision, same date, but you've got a good side and a bad side, and that falls on all you guys' laps. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher. Any questions for Mr. Belcher? Thank you, sir. I'd be happy to, while waiting for Matt here, I'll comment on a few of the things that Mr. Sanders and Mr. Belcher brought up. They stated, yes, there was vote in July, and then in September, after the spiking of hospitalizations and cases, I conferred with all members of council and the members of the Ozark Council, and also health professionals from the Christian County, Greene County, and the medical facilities in Springfield, and it was decided to go ahead and put the mask mandate in place, which we have decided, again, consultation with my council, consultation with the Ozark Council, consultation with the Ozark Mayor, which I'll come back to, that we decided, again, to stay in sync so that residents of Christian County could have a single thing, so that people move from Nixa to Ozark, go back and forth, go to Springfield. It's easier if we have a single path forward, and so that's why we work together to come up with these decisions. I've seen Mr. Sanders and Mr. Belcher both speak on this on social media before. I don't think I've heard them speak at the meeting before, but regarding how I lied about the mandate. Again, I think the minutes show that the question that was asked was, would there be a vote on masking at that particular meeting, which there wasn't, and the response was that there was not going to be. So, again, we can disagree if it was if emergency orders were put in place or not. Every state, federal government, and almost every city in the state and across the country put in some sort of emergency mandate related to COVID because we couldn't get together for meetings, and also because we couldn't, we did need to make some fast choices. So again, when hospitalizations double, that's a choice that you need to make that doesn't need to take a month to make. The recall, I agree 100% with both Mr. Sanders and Mr. Belcher that is part of the Home Rule Charter. I'm a 100% supporter of the Home Rule Charter. There are members of this council who were on the Home Rule Charter Committee. That is the path that should be taken when you have a disagreement of that form. So, and I'm glad that you're taking advantage of that. Mr. Sanders said vilified, and I think that's horrible. I don't think anybody should be vilified in person or in social media. Having had my wife threatened, my daughter threatened, my own life threatened, Mayor Gardner's address and phone number were published on the internet. and people had threatened to drag him from his home and beat him. I think that it goes both ways, and again, I don't think that should happen in any case. Mr. Belcher brought up, leadership and working with others. I guess disagree. I believe working with others is a very important part of leadership. Throughout the pandemic, I've worked with my city staff. I've worked with the Christian County Health Department, the Greene County Health Department. On a couple of occasions, we have met with hospital officials or had hospital officials from Springfield, since Nixa doesn't have its own hospital, to provide testimony to council and to myself. I've also worked very closely with the mayor of Ozark, the mayor of Republic. We had conversations with them as well, the Board of Aldermen from Ozark as well. And I was in contact for weeks before the election with all three candidates from Ozark to make sure that we could coordinate the end of the masking, so that, again, as soon as the numbers showed that we were pretty close, and I think someone asked about that at the last meeting, can you give me exact numbers? And I said no, because we're going to work in cooperation with other cities like Ozark to make sure that everything is aligned, so that we don't have 3 different dates when the masks all lift, so that we can have a coordinated message for Christian County and move forward as one organization or one region that works together very well for all of our residents. So again, I've been in contact with Mayor-elect Jackson several times this past week as well, and so I think we're going to continue that great relationship of working with Ozark moving forward. So I think that was everything that you had brought up. So, all right, we'll move on to the presentation section. Mr. Russell.
All right. Get some energy going in this room, huh? Get something fun and exciting to talk about.
You know I like maps, Mr. Russell.
I love it. So here's what we got. So in front of you right now, actually coming before you in the near future, will be a resolution that the city will bring to you. We're finalizing some details on that right now, and I know staff's been working diligently and behind the scenes, and we've had a lot of fun meetings that we have been having, including safety meetings. We had a safety and security meeting just the other day talking about how we can continue to make sure that Sucker Days Music, Arts, and Crafts Festival is a safe event. We were taught a very, very important lesson in 2019, that it was good that we did have a plan. And so just in case, we've been working behind that. We've had a lot of subcommittee meetings behind the scenes, and everything is moving in the right direction. And I just wanted to give you an update on kind of some of the major things, major changes that you're going to see coming in the near future. Because hopefully when the city comes back and they bring you that resolution, you don't have all the long, detailed stuff that we've been working on. You don't need to see that. I'll give you the Cliff Note version of that today. Of course, if you want any of that information, I'm sure the city would be happy to email that to you, or just contact me and I can tell you about where all the roads are going to be closed and all that fun stuff. All right, so in front of you tonight is something kind of fun, and I'm going to hit over this just briefly. Before I do that, I want you to look at last year's map. I feel like Vanna White, so here's last year's map, everybody. Everybody can see that? It's kind of fun. Okay, so basically, we've pretty much doubled almost the entire event. And this is going in after the pandemic, or after missing 2020. And as we look at the new changes, I have to get a bigger map now. I'm playing Sucker Day. So we go, I know, now you can't see. I'm so sorry. I knew that was going to happen. It won't be up very long. Okay, so basically, major changes coming. So the basic format of what we normally do, which is rides up on the north end, and then we get into what I like to call the civic area. And this is where we're going to find Nixa Police Department, Christian County Sheriff's Department, those kind of booths that will be there. And then, of course, on the main parking lot, the city parking lot, will be the big top tent once again. Doing things a little different inside of there. If you notice on the sheet that you have in front of you, and I did leave some out in the lobby if somebody else wants to have one of those, you can see some of the different events that we're creating inside of Sucker Day. So one of the things that we're doing in the big top tent is a dog show this year for the love of canines, and that is a dog rescue organization that works directly with our dog pound. So when our dogs that get captured don't have a home, they make sure that it gets adopted. They have a program for that. So we're excited about supporting that. Pause for a Cause is the name of that. Also in the big top tent, as I like to refer to it, that afternoon, your Nixa, I'll mess this up, Chief, Nixa Police Department, Nixa Police Citizens Academy Alumni Association. Is that right, Darlene? Is that close enough? Okay, that group. So I probably should have just read it. I think it's correct on here. They are going to be hosting a cornhole tournament to benefit the officers of the Nixa Police Department. Now, as I was talking to Officer Whitehill the other day and just having a conversation how we make sure we market this, you know, these funds that they raise really kind of go towards the officers themselves, so they can have a Christmas party. They can have maybe even a Christmas present that's been donated by this group. And I think there's some other requests occasionally. I think Officer Forgy is now wanting a customized set of cornhole boards. So I don't know. Maybe that's something they can give to them. But that way Jennifer doesn't have to put it into the budget. You know, it doesn't hit the budget, and we spend that money towards something else for the police department. So excited about doing that. And then, of course, there's another cool thing, 300 sucker fish. So, Darlene, we're going sucker grabbing next weekend. So get your gear ready. We're going to have to go grab some. We are working on getting that back again. Of course, we will not have the traditional meal. It'll be suckerfish samples while supplies last. We're up over 100 plus crafters and artists right now. We don't really allow direct sales at this event, so it's really those homemade artists and crafters that get that $85 booth space, and it has been awesome seeing the support and how many people are ready for this event to happen. We have over 25 plus people right now that are engaging or volunteering or being told to come volunteer, those kind of things, and it's really kind of neat to see that support as people really want to make sure that this happens. We have over 25 plus new items this year that are like kids games and carnival games and those kind of items. Some of them are left over from 2019, but we've added some new things, adding a new element to this event. We're up over 15 food vendors right now, which is fantastic, and we have some really cool ones we'll be announcing very soon. And that also includes your dessert trucks and then your drinks and lemonades and root beers and those kind of things. We have 13 live performers performing on 2 different stages this year. We've increased the amount of gospel music that we bring. We saw a big desire for that from our faith-based community. And then, of course, in the big time, we've even added a new and improved stage down there for them that were on loan from the Springfield Park Board. Yep, I got it, Matt. Isn't that cool? So we were able to get that stage. And then, of course, in the big top, we'll have some headliners on Friday and Saturday night. And then we have... and plus, on those live performers, like 5 or 6 of them are local churches, and then we have some Branson acts coming in and some other big name gospel acts. The other thing I really love about Sucker Day and the way that we took the vision, when the mayor and I walked out of that breakfast meeting, and they said that they just couldn't continue to keep Sucker Day going, and I remember the mayor saying to me privately later, "Not on my watch," and I said, "Me either." And that's when we came up with this idea that we have to get more people involved in participating in the planning and the success and the results of Sucker Day. And I was reviewing the footage earlier today with a guy who's going to do some drone footage, who is licensed, Chief Campbell. He's a licensed drone operator. From the one that Drew had in 2018 done to what we were able to do in 19, and just seeing that increased crowd was very, very fun. But the big thing is the 10 nonprofit groups that right now that I know that are engaged. One, obviously for the love of canines. That's really cool. We have, of course, the Alumni Association. We are also benefiting Nixa football team is going to be working the dunk tank, and as well as the cheerleaders. We have the girls basketball program, and we are also helping do a fundraiser for the wrestling team. So those 4. The Nixa Art Club is benefiting from this as well, so our high school art club. Arts Council is not going to be overly involved. All the people who are currently serving on that committee are also very highly engaged in the Sucker Day committee, so it won't be a whole lot of Nixa Arts Council, and so we're not going to be focusing on that as much, but we have something new, and I think Jimmy's going to be announcing that a little bit later tonight. And then, of course, you know, the Sucker Day Foundation that awards 3 high school scholarships. Your chamber does benefit just a tad. We do make some money off of Sucker Day, but so much of it goes back into the logistics of it. So the other cool thing that we're doing is we're adding a whole bunch of other kids' rides on the south end. So now when you come down to Sucker Day, you're going to have, basically, I'm trying to stay in the mic, Drew. You're going to have the blue areas are where the kids' rides are, and for the love of canines will be on location with dog adoption options that day. We're going to be having, of course, the farm zone. Here's where the kids' area is going to be, which is over in front of the Fought Administration Building. And then the art zone and so many more things. Little Miss Main Street pageant, of course. Of course, that benefits Downtown Revitalization Group. So it's just really coming along great, guys. And I tell you, I cannot do this without the support of so many, including the staff of several members of the Nixa city staff, including the police department, the utility department, planning and zoning department, and it's just a really great effort. And I'm really excited that you'll be having this in front of you in the very near future with all the recommendations. We were able to, this is kind of a fun thing, we had a private security group reach out, and they want to help be a part of Sucker Day by providing the overnight security so that I don't have to ask, and in my original ask, I did have it in there, that we were going to be asking for, there it goes, timber, yay. we are going to be asking for overnight security again, but now we don't have to tax our police department with that, thanks to a private company that's going to step up. The other cool thing, I don't know if I put it in here, I don't see that I did, but the other big number is 30. We have over 30 businesses who are engaging or sponsoring Sucker Day to some capacity. How cool is it that we're creating an environment for our community through the Sucker Day or Music Arts and Crafts Festival, that 30 different businesses from all sorts of levels, from 10,000 all the way down to $1.50, $150 that is, are going to be able to engage and have their name be seen at Sucker Day. We'll have like 13 or 14 sponsor booths on location that they can interact with the community. And so I thought that was really cool. Year one, we were scrambling and barely got this thing out the door, and yet we still were able to bless a few businesses. This year, through the efforts of all the things that happened in 2019, 30 plus businesses. And I just think that's really cool that we can help them engage with our community. So guys, I'm really excited about bringing this to our town. It's not just me, it's a collaborative effort. There is something that, you see that 10,000, that's not attendance. I think it'll be higher than that. You know, in 2019, or 2020, you had approved $8,000 to go towards Sucker Day sponsorships, and it was paid. I received that, we put that into the bank, and then we know what happened, and we know we didn't have events, and your chamber had to kind of figure out a way to continue to operate. We didn't have as many activities and events going on. A chamber lunch in attendance went from about 150 down to a measly 70 by June and July, actually July when we first did our live event back after the lockdown. We weren't able to make money. Our plan in 2020 was $5 wristbands. You can see that on the sheet here to help offset those costs. We weren't able to make those monies. And so a lot of that money that was donated, yes, we still honoring those sponsorships, but that went to continue operations of the Nixa Chamber. I'm not going to give you an amount tonight. I mean, it would be nice to see $8,000 to $10,000 that could be donated back into this program to help me continue to reboot it. As you can see, we're doubling everything, and there's a lot more that goes with that, including additional tents, additional porta potties. We're trying to anticipate spreading it out even further. We haven't come up with any guidelines yet. We're waiting till we get closer as far as what the recommendations will be. I'm sure it will be just use your best judgment, wear a mask if you feel comfortable, those kind of things is what we'll be encouraging people to do. But I know that you guys plan for these things, and I think I can make Sucker Day happen this year. It'll be tight, but I'm pretty sure, confident. It's about a $40,000 to $45,000 minimum for me to do this. And, you know, with the sponsorships that we have and not sure how much we're going to sell in tickets, as far as tickets, it might be tight. I also know that later on this year, I'm going to be coming back to you about the Nixa fireworks or the Sky High Fireworks Show. I know that I'm going to need some help on that too. Again, these are not chamber events. Yes, we can benefit our businesses. Yes, we can get them out there, but that's good for economic development. What this is this is good for Nixa. And you know what, Justin, Scott, Mayor, Peterson, Aaron, Darlene, and Jared, we need it. We need this big time. So guys, any questions for me about what's happening on May 21st, 22nd?
I have a question. You said a farm section, is that a petting zoo?
Yes, we are bringing, thank you, Darlene, we are. We just confirmed that the other day. Come to find out, I had tried to use local FFAs, and that didn't work as well. I was confirming my pony ride person. She goes, you know, I have a petting zoo. Okay, all right, sounds good. Let's bring a petting zoo. And so actually that's another collaborative effort, that lot where we're going to have it, which is right there across from where the gospel stage is going to be. So right here, we had a tent there last year. We'll have a tent there for shade and relaxation, and next to the porta potties, we'll also have the ponies there, the petting zoo, and hopefully an antique tractor or two if we can fit it in there. That lot did get damaged during the remodel of Highway 14. Mr. Colvin has already told me that they're going to fix it, get it back up to par. And I believe he's going to try to find me some wood chips. We're not sure yet. He's going to see what he can do for me for those animals. So I hear we have a lot of them. That's from what I hear. Yeah, so yes, we will try to have a petting zoo. Any other questions?
Any other questions from
You guys excited? Okay, Sucker Day ceremonies will be noon on Sunday. We're going to have a really cool marching parade right down the middle of the show, at the Nixa High School Crimson Corps marching drum line. We'll be marching right down the middle, and everybody know to come on up at 12 o'clock to the Sucker Day ceremonies. We'll have the national anthem, a few little fun things. Darlene, do you have another question?
Can you outline when the events start on Friday and go through Saturday?
Oh, yeah, so we are doing the parade. So we're hoping to be completely open by 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon. We know that there's a parade going on. We know this is tough, but this is what a lot of festivals do. They don't mind to have the parade. In some cases, the parade will go right by the event. That's not the situation. We'll be using the approved parade route from the Nixa Police Department. And then, of course, that'll be at 6. The Christian County Shrine Club, that's another one of the nonprofits that benefit from this. And then, of course, 4C Saratoga. The Shrine Club will be running the parade. We'll do the traditional king and queen. We've got already a lot of vendors coming in that. We do not charge to be in the parade. We do not really, Sucker Day, the actual event, we have rules and regs about who can have booths, but the parade is a little bit more open so that whoever wants to participate just needs to send us an application, and we just send it on to the Shrine Club and let them participate in the parade for absolutely free. We'll be back open and we're going till 10 o'clock at night. We're bringing in additional lighting, working with a local vendor for that. We already have a few light towers put up in place, and then we're going to be renting a few more. And then in addition to that, we'll run from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Saturday night. And we'll have the kids' rides and everything going all the way up until that point. It's going to be big. Come on, let's do it, Nixa. All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Unless there's
Russell.
any other questions, I will remove my maps. I'll probably just leave them up here up front, and then we'll come get them later. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me. It's in your back pocket.
It's in your back pocket.
And Mr. Lyles, if you could review our event budget and send something out to us, let us know what we look like there. Shake your head's good. I accept
There
that.
it is. I couldn't get the mic turned on. Sure, we'll do that.
All right. We'll move on to our next presentation. Mr. Tyson.
I wish I had a cool radio voice like Chris, but I don't. I'm sorry.
This is pretty good.
Focus on the visuals, maybe. Can you bring up the actual presentation? What I want to do here is just briefly give you kind of a snapshot of residential development activity as of today. We can give this snapshot to you again at other intervals in time, but this will at least show you where we're at today, and hopefully in the future, as we engage more in the comprehensive planning process, we'll be having more conversations about where we're going to go from this point and how we're going to facilitate residential development moving forward. But as of where we're at today, this map shows you the location of residential zoning that is vacant, that's already inside the city limits. Presumably, this is land that is already annexed, it's already zoned, and it could be developed. There might be some infrastructure questions that kind of hang over some of these properties, which is perhaps why they haven't developed already, but regardless, they remain vacant, and there is not presently a plan to develop these particular parcels. They don't have an approved pre-plat, and there's no active and engaged in paperwork with the city. That's 330 acres of land that's inside the city that is zoned for single-family residential, 12 acres zoned for two-family residential, and the purple tracks are 147 acres in total zoned for multifamily residential. This shows the only project that we have right now that is an active concept. This will be a rezone that will come before, a rezone and an annexation that will come before the City Council at its meetings in May. There'll be a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission on May 5th about this particular proposal. This is at the intersection of Main and Tracker, and it will include the annexation of about 50 acres to go along with a tract that is already in the city. And this map shows the proposed zoning arrangement that they are asking for at this particular location. Again, this is conceptual only. It would require the annexation and the zoning, and then it would have to proceed towards preliminary plat, construction design, actual construction, et cetera. Those residential properties that do have preliminary plats, what a preliminary plat means for those in the audience who may not be familiar, that means that the city has approved a layout and a plan for development of this particular site. So the city has given some conditional rights that say that layout that you've proposed, that's good and you can develop that way. In a lot of cases, even if the city changes regulations later, you still have your pre-plat and can develop accordingly. So we currently have 10 preliminary plats that have been approved and are out there waiting to be developed and constructed. These represent preliminarily 1,211 lots in total. Some of these are currently under construction, some of them are not. I'm going to go over just briefly some of those that are under construction that will that are anticipated to bring lots into the market sometime in 2021. This just gives you a snapshot of kind of the how lots trickle down through development. So the first row there are lots that are preliminary platted, as I just mentioned, that we've got 1,211 in total. 960 of those do not currently have any activity associated with them. There's no engaged processes with the city. Those pre-plats are approved, but nothing is actively happening on them. 250 of those over 1,200 lots, 251, are actually under construction. There is dirt moving, or there will be dirt moving soon on those 251 lots. Those are the lots that I anticipate being brought into the market in 2021. Pardon me. And then we have 224 lots in the city that are final platted. You could pull a building permit on any one of those 224 tomorrow if you wanted to. These numbers obviously change over time. So just a few weeks ago, these numbers were different, but not that different. We have recently brought into the market a significant number of lots over the last couple of months by final platting 2 entire subdivisions. However, we also issued 41 single-family building permits in the month of March. So you bring some down from the under construction into the final platted, but then you lose some from the final platted because you issued building permits on those lots. So these numbers are always changing, always fluctuating. We track them all the time. This gives you a snapshot of where it's at as of today. This is an illustration of one of those preliminary plats that is currently under construction. You'll begin to see some dirt moving on 63 lots located at Meadowbrook Phase 1. This is kind of in the southwest portion of the city. This is Norton Road here, which will line up with the new Truman Road project that will come in and intersect with the existing Norton Road in this location right here. 63 lots in that preliminary plat. 17 lots in the Kelby Creek Phase 6 subdivision, which is at the southernmost tip of the city limits of Nixa. That'll be a private gated subdivision, bringing 17 lots into the market sometime soon. This has been under construction for some time, but not yet reached the finish line. Forest Heights Phase 1 and 2 have been approved for construction, totaling 74 lots. That is, the portion of this subdivision in this general vicinity, or those 74 lots. There are remaining phases that can be developed later inside the Forest Heights subdivision. If that name's not familiar to you, this development was previously called Richmond, and a successor developer changed the name to Forest Heights. So 74 lots currently under construction there. Cheyenne Valley Phase 1, which is the northern portion of the development that you see illustrated here, will include 38 single-family lots. Phase 2, which is the entire remainder of the development, which I think is just over 160 lots, is being designed and is under review by city staff, but it has not been approved yet for construction. 26 lots will be added in Irish Hills Phase 3. Again, I anticipate this to be sometime in the next year or so, if not sooner. This is currently, again, being approved for construction to add 26 lots. 22 lots in Copperleaf Phase 5. They were just approved to begin construction just a few weeks ago by the city, so I believe you'll start to see dirt moving out there if you haven't seen that already. This is located in the northeast portion of Nixa. This is Tracker Road, located on the northern, at the top of the map here, just to give some reference. And these are the locations of those 224 final platted lots that you could pull a building permit on right now. I think we'll begin to see some of these absorbed relatively quickly, just given the high demand in the market right now. You'll also see, and I apologize for the map, there wasn't a great way to show these, but you'll see that some are just kind of scattered all throughout. That's because there's a portion of these lots that have some kind of encumbrance associated with them, or some kind of difficulty. It may be a steep slope, it may be that they're located next to a sinkhole or a detention basin, but something that makes them less desirable or a little bit slightly less competitive with other lots in the market, so they'll sit a little bit longer. But the rest of these I would anticipate to move relatively quickly given the demand. The 2 new subdivisions that were just platted are located here. That's a subdivision called Walnut Creek Manor, and right here, which is a subdivision called Auburn Heights, and I think you'll begin to see houses going up in both of these neighborhoods very soon. So the bottom line, Nixa obviously plays a very major role in housing, not just in Nixa, but in the entire region. Nixa is obviously the second most populous municipality in the Springfield area and contributes a significant portion to residential development in the entire Springfield metro area. So as Nixa goes, that will have a significant impact on the entire regional market. So that includes policies that we have in place. Those policies won't just affect residential development in Nixa, they will also impact residential development more broadly just because of the volume that Nixa does in terms of residential development. Eventually, I think what we'll find is that there will be some public infrastructure constraints that we begin to notice. The city made some very important critical investments in public infrastructure in decades past that has facilitated a lot of the residential development that you've seen over the last couple of decades. But as those investments reach capacity, it will become time, and it already has become time, to begin planning for what's going to come next. The Public Works Department, Doug and his team have already been doing a lot of that in 2018. There was a wastewater master plan done for the southwest portion of the city to try to pinpoint, once we reach certain pinch points and capacity limits, where would we make future investments to facilitate growth if that growth is desirable and appropriate. And I do think that Nixa's residential growth is appropriate, and I think facilitating residential growth broadly is appropriate given what's happening in the market. I think that adding new housing units is not a bad thing. It's not just categorically a good thing either. You want to be adding them in the right way. You want to have a healthy balance of not just sprawling growth, but also infill development and redevelopment of sites. That can also be very efficient for the city to grow in that way. That being said, I think adding housing units is important right now, particularly from an affordability standpoint. The Springfield area has an affordability problem, just like every other metro area in the United States right now. Housing prices continue to climb, but wages are not climbing as fast. And so that's true here in the Springfield area. Housing prices climbing, wages a little bit more stagnant than that. So it's an important issue, and adding those housing units can help. That's it. I hope I was brief enough and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Mr. Tyson?
No.
No. That was very informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to first reading of ordinances. Ordinance.
To be talking about the first of the towers to be painted under our new program that was established as part of the strategic plan. During the strategic plan discussion, the committee was very strongly in favor of initiating a tower painting program that would bring all of our towers into a uniform design and look. Part of that was to establish a single branded logo along with a program that would move forward with painting several towers in a series over a number of years to bring all those towers into compliance with that strategic plan process. This year, we did budget for one of those water towers to be painted. Tower number 5, located on the Nixa High School campus, was the one that was chosen that was most in need of painting at this time. We have moved forward with bidding of the project. We were pleasantly surprised that we received 8 bids for the project. The lowest bid at $40,693 was received from Hogan's, which was well within the budget that we established for the painting of the tower, and is a company that the city has worked with several times over the last 20 years. Most recently, they were the company that completed the rehabilitation and repainting of tower number 2 at Rotary Park. So we were very comfortable with Hogan's work. They have done a fantastic job in the past. Drew, if I could get you to scroll down to page 3, we'll show you the logos that are going to be painted on the water tower. In this case, tower number 5 at the high school, there was an agreement at the time that the high school provided 1 acre of land on their campus for the water tower, that we would provide a logo on the west side of the tower, which is that side that faces the high school stadium, that would be, of course, in favor of the Nixa schools and promote their image. On the west side, we will have the Nixa branding logo for the water utility, which you'll see on the left that says Nixa Utilities for the water department. On the east side, we worked with the Nixa schools to come up with a branding image that they were comfortable with having on not only this tower at the high school, but ultimately on the water tower at High Point Elementary off of Cheyenne Road, or High Point and Summit Intermediate School. So working with the school district, they chose the image that you see on the screen, which is the eagle head that is most familiar and shown on the helmets of the football stadium. Brandon Clark, the athletic director, was very excited about the opportunity to change that logo at this time. So we are recommending approval of the contract as submitted for Hogan's, which will provide for the repainting of Tower 5 along with the two logos that are up on the screen. They have indicated that they would be available to start work within 30 days, and they have a deadline of August 1st to make sure that we stay ahead of the upcoming football season. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have regarding the proposal.
On the logoing, is it, do we have like a plan to put the different city logos on different ones, or just do all of them with the water?
No, as part of the strategic plan, they wanted one logo that would be a branding for the community. So when we painted Tower number 8 over at Well 10 on Norton Road, we chose the Nixa Water Utilities, and the Strategic Plan Committee recommended that we utilize that logo for all of the Nixa water towers. So
Okay,
that
so
is the logo.
they specifically requested that one and
Yes.
not the standard kind of Nixa city logo or something like that?
Correct. At the time the Strategic Plan Committee was meeting, that logo had just recently been painted on Tower number 8, and they were real excited and liked that image and wanted to make sure that we kept with the same brand and same image throughout the community. What they didn't like is, if you'll notice, most of our towers, they all have Nixa on them, but there's several different shapes, sizes, and configurations of the word Nixa. They wanted to change that and become more uniform. So with that, they wanted us to stick with one logo, and in this case, our Nixa Water Utility brand is the one that we're moving forward with.
Mayor, Council, just for clarification, the Strategic Planning Committee did recommend one logo for all. They did not specifically identify the Nixa Utilities. That was an action step that staff put in.
Oh, my
Just for
apologies,
clarification.
my apologies. I know at the meeting, we talked about the new tower that was being painted, sorry. No, thank you, Jimmy.
Yeah, I didn't know if for branding purposes, they're all currently red, and changing it to blue, is that something that was considered? Because that doesn't go with anything else, right? It goes with the water in the tower.
Yeah, that was chosen because that was the water branding for the water tower, but that's the reason that logo was chosen.
Okay. Any other questions?
All right,
Thanks, Travis.
thank you.
We will open up the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to this item, you can do so at this time. And we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? I like the red logo better.
Yeah, it's kind of.
We all like I think we all like the red logo.
One other thing,
We'll discuss it.
and if I'm remembering correctly, thinking back to when we cleaned that water tower, it seems like cleaning it costs about as much as repainting it.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Yeah.
When we cleaned the water tower, because that was the one that was extremely dirty and I wanted it clean.
Yeah.
What was the cost of that? The power washing? Yeah, just to clean it.
That was 20,000.
They clean,
Okay.
they clean the inside and the
Inside as
outside.
well,
That's what-
okay.
Yeah, that's what
Because I
the
was
issue
thinking, why don't
is.
we just repaint them every time then?
Yeah, no.
But,
Yeah, no, that was, yeah.
Yeah. And for
Okay.
clarification, Mayor, Council, you mentioned something about you like the other logo better, or is the suggestion that we go to a different logo?
Maybe, I don't know.
I just feel like someone coming in from out of town, the Nixa water logo is not exactly, and no
Yeah,
offense
that's not
to
identifying,
utilities, but-
identifying to the community. I mean, that's my opinion, I don't know everybody.
I
I think
apologize.
we
I
have
still
some time before we have to finalize it. We could change the logo between now.
Yes, and
and
Drew
see.
was just pointing out that we're getting ready to go through a branding exercise for the city, so there may be something that comes out of that as well.
Right.
That would be done.
I mean, if we have one that says water, and then we decide to do all the rest with the red logo, and then we do the water one with the red logo at the end, so that it still meets the strategic plan objective of having them all the same, I think that's fine.
Okay.
But we can discuss that between now and then and at the next meeting.
Absolutely.
And on that tower over there, wouldn't the water and utilities logo be on the south side of the tower? Or is it? Because if the eagle is facing the football stadium,
Yeah,
Oh,
the
that's
other,
right.
right, would be the other direction. You're
Okay.
correct.
Be on the east side, I
Okay.
mean, southeast side.
I just wanted to make sure to clarify, go ahead and move forward with this one as it is, as we've presented to you, or do you want us to look into what it would take to change that at this
Yeah,
time?
if you could check with them and see if there would be a cost difference from painting the red logo, the red city logo versus the
Will do.
white, or the blue water logo.
Okay,
And then,
I follow you.
and if it's drastically more expensive, then we probably won't do it. I don't,
Well, I don't think it'll be
I
a lot more
assume it's like-
expensive. There could be a slight change order to it. But I just
Okay.
wanted to clarify before we went and asked that, so,
Yeah, if you could check on that for us and see what the difference would be to do it with the red logo.
okay?
All right, we'll move on to the next one, Bill 2021-042.
First reading, Council Bill Number 2021-042, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa rezoning approximately 0.18 acres of property generally located at 303 North Main Street from an R1 to an NC zoning district.
Good evening. Drew, would you mind to put the map up for the illustration? The Christian County Ambulance District, which is presently located on North Main Street in the 300 block, 301 North Main Street is their existing facility. They've acquired the tract to the north of them. It's equivalent size to the tract they have now, approximately 1.18 acres of land, which is relatively small. They have acquired that and have plans to expand onto that tract. The city's zoning code permits the ambulance district to have facilities in both zones, both the R1 and the neighborhood commercial that they currently have. So the rezone wasn't technically legally necessary, but staff recommended to them that it would be cleaner and prevent future confusion if they would go ahead and just rezone their entire site that they plan on using to the neighborhood commercial district just for the purpose of cohesion. So they made that application. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on this just a week ago on Monday evening. The Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended approval of this rezone. Staff also recommends approval of this rezone.
Any questions?
No.
Thank you, Garrett. We will open the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to this item, you can do so at this time.
My name is Nathan Rapp with Insight Design Architects. Our address is 112 South Main Street here in Nixa. And I'm the architect representing Christian County Ambulance District for this rezoning. And really don't have anything to add, just wanted to let the council know that we're here in case you have any questions for us at this point. We'd be happy to answer those as well.
Any questions?
No.
No, I think we're all good. Oh, did you have a question?
No, I said thank you.
No, thank you. We will leave the public hearing open. And close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Thank you very much. We'll move on to our second readings, ordinance 2021-037.
Second reading, Council Bill Number 2021-037, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa amending Section 16-143 of the City Code to prohibit the general discharge of firearms within the city.
Chief.
Mayor, Council, as you know, about a year ago, we made a revision to this ordinance to allow a variety of different projectile weapons to be discharged in the city as long as it was done in a safe manner. At that time, we were relying mainly on our unlawful use of a weapon ordinance to handle any issues that would come about as a result of discharge of a firearm. But through a review, it was noted that there were some situations in which a firearm could potentially be discharged in the city and still be in compliance with the unlawful use of the weapons ordinance. As a result of that, we'd like to make a change. We've proposed that change to add the term firearm back into the prohibited use of projectile weapons and prohibit the use of firearms. Generally speaking, whenever you look at these kinds of situations, the example I give is if a person were to take their firearm out in their backyard, they could potentially discharge that firearm, say, into the ground for, whatever reason, maybe their check functions test or something of that nature, and that would not be against city ordinance as it is. And I think we can all agree that the general discharge of firearms in a suburban or urban environment is probably not what we were going for when we made those original changes. So we would like to see this changed. Of course, this would not apply to a person who was using a firearm in defense as defined by RSMO. That is already in our existing city ordinance with our unlawful use of weapons, those exemptions. It also would not have any effect on our ability to use the police firing range, as that would be a city function, or it would not affect our ability as law enforcement to discharge a firearm in the lawful function of our duties. But we do believe that this is a good change, and I don't believe it's going to affect anyone's rights. It's not going to prohibit somebody from defending themselves or others, and it's not going to put people in a situation where they will be in fear of using a firearm in a manner in that speaking, because you are protected. Any questions?
Any questions? No? Think you covered everything. Thank you very much, Chief. We will open up the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to this item, you can do so at this time.
My name is Kent Ward, 201 West State Street here in Nixa. With all due respect to Chief Campbell, it's the government's job to protect liberty, not be the people's nanny. It's not the council's job to control the citizens. It's the council's job to protect the citizens' rights and liberty. Council Bill 2021-37 is not needed. It is, in fact, a control issue. Current laws allow for the negligent use of a firearm, and if a bullet leaves property and damages other property, maims, or kills, there are existing laws in place to take care of that. This bill is a case of malum prohibitum. Since malum in se is already covered, it is my opinion that this is not needed. That is all I have, unless there's any questions.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will leave open the public hearing. And we will close the public hearing. Any further questions or discussion?
So I did want to say, I think with this one, going back to originally what the intent was, it was to allow, the shooting of a BB gun or something like that on your own property. Firearms were never really meant to be a part of that because they were already classified, which is why we talked about, what the unlawful use was of a firearm and how you're protected to use your firearm in self-defense. So just for clarification, this closes an unintended consequence of reducing restrictions in Nixa. That's basically what I have to say.
I believe that's true. Yeah. Any other questions or discussion? Motion to approve?
So made.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Justin Orff,
Yes.
Scott Perryman,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Jared Giddens.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We will move on to Bill 2020-038.
Second reading, Council Bill Number 2021-038, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute an annexation agreement with New York Air Brake for property generally located at 1375 West Snyder Boulevard.
Good evening. Do you mind to scroll to the map, please? Snyder Equipment is located, as you see here, on West Snyder Boulevard, which intersects with South Nicholas Road, not far south of Mount Vernon Street or Highway 14 in Nixa. Snyder Equipment operates their business from a variety of facilities there, and they're located currently in an unincorporated Christian County. They have need to perform or construct a 10,000 square foot addition to one of these buildings, which will, according to the county's regulations, require them to come to the city of Nixa to inquire first about connection to our wastewater facilities. The goal of that policy to be to, whenever possible, connect people to public wastewater facilities rather than continue to rely on private wastewater facilities unless there's no other option. So they came to us. They have need to construct this building addition relatively quickly. So what staff proposed was for Snyder Equipment to enter into an irrevocable consent to annexation, go ahead and proceed to get the construction project underway, connect to city's wastewater facilities now. They're also going to design their stormwater facilities to Nix's regulations, and then the city can come and annex them afterward. And staff does recommend that we come back and annex them afterward, zone them, and bring them into the city as soon as that construction project is done. It helps the city accomplish its policy goals of keep getting people onto the public system and off of private systems that age and in some cases are more likely to fail. It also helps the business accomplish their goals of proceeding with their construction project according to their previously agreed to timelines. Staff, of course, recommends approval.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Tyson. We will open a public hearing. If you'd like to speak to this item, you can do so at this time.
Andrea Seitz, Show Me Christian County, Mayor and Council. Just to reiterate, through our capacity serving as economic development liaisons with the city staff, we have been working alongside this company for a couple years, actually. And at different parts in the history, it was possible that they were going to make some changes that would impact the job count here locally. While this is outside the city limits, these jobs are definitely considered jobs here in the local Nixa economy. And so they made the decision. We were able to retain that business. And just to reiterate, this is a great solution, an example really of the city of Nixa working alongside the county to meet their business timeline, as Mr. Tyson mentioned. So with this expansion, this will allow the projection at full capacity of an additional 20 jobs through this expansion of the 10,000 square feet, and we are looking forward to them continuing to do that. That will make them, once they are in the city limits, one of the top 3 largest private employers within the city limits. And with their existing capacity between 75 and 80 and their new jobs, then that would bring them right around the 100 count. So we just wanted to speak in favor, and again, how much it's been appreciated for the city staff to really keep the business timeline in mind when working on this project. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the site? Thank you very much. We will leave the public hearing open. If anyone else would like to speak to this item, you can do so at this time. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Any further questions from council? Discussion? Motion to approve?
So made. Second.
Roll call, please.
Scott Perryman.
Yes.
Aaron Peterson.
Yes.
Darlene Graham.
Yes.
Jared Giddens.
Yes.
Justin Orff.
Yes.
And we will move on to our discussion items. Who's speaking on the chickens? Tyson.
Thank you. So As you recall, at the last city council meeting, council directed staff to prepare for a discussion on the possibility of, sorry, I can remove this.
Hold on. Can we turn the volume of the mics up?
Storm,
Is that possible? Sure.
I have it all the way up.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll start over.
All right.
It's a lot louder.
That's better.
As you recall, at the last city council meeting, council directed staff to prepare for a discussion on how and whether to regulate or allow for the keeping and husbandry, the technical term as I understand it, of chickens inside the city limits in the residential zoning district. Of course, you could lawfully have chickens in the agricultural zoning district, but in Nixa, there's not much of that. And so the question is whether to allow that in the residential zoning district, because it is presently prohibited. There's an exception in the code for the school district and other educational facilities to do some chicken husbandry, but as far as allowing that in residential districts, it remains prohibited. Other communities in the area do allow for this, and so I think over time it has become a little bit more normal and customary than maybe it was in the past, even in urban and suburban settings like places Springfield, Nixa, and similar areas. Staff has considered this. We had some discussions internally about the issue, so we thought we'd offer those thoughts and assessments to you here, and then ultimately be council's decision whether to bring some or direct staff to draft any kind of legislation for actual consideration in public hearing. So in considering this from a land use perspective, which is my particular area of expertise, that's where I have specialized knowledge, I just, in the interest of full disclosure, have very little specialized knowledge about the animals themselves. So I just want to make that clear. If you ask a question about chickens and I don't know the answer, I really don't know. I just don't know a lot. So from a land use perspective, I don't have very many concerns. I think that if people are responsible and that if it's carefully regulated in terms of keeping it to a certain scale, I don't think that you would experience the types of externalities that I would be concerned with, that I would recommend to the council that we should have what I refer to in the memo as an ex-ante prohibition or a preventative prohibition. I think those are better reserved for cases in which you have some reliable sense that that activity is either going to produce some sort of externality, and by externality I mean some sort of effect that kind of goes over your property onto somebody else's. That is, so when that externality is very hazardous, or you think it will be so frequent that the disturbance will interfere with the rights of a neighboring property owner, which in a setting like Nixa, that neighboring property owner is going to be very close to you. Those are the instances in which that kind of preventive prohibition is best suited. And so that's why we say, okay, you can't put an industrial factory right next to somebody's house, right? You have a reasonable expectation that that's going to create some interferences that will interfere with the rights of the residential neighbor in that case. In the case of chicken husbandry, I don't know that that exists, that the potential hazard is so severe, or even the frequency of it would create such a disturbance. I do think there are some concerns, so I think some regulation is appropriate, and that's what staff is kind of recommending in this memo. I think you have to keep it to a scale that is appropriate to the scale of a typical residential lot in Nixa, that being pretty small with neighbors pretty close. So what we've recommended here in our recommendation is no roosters, typical of kind of the regulation of chickens in this type of a setting, simply because you can have an expectation that that could be a disturbance at the scale of urban residential living. Require containment. What I mean by that is the use of a chicken coop. If allowed to just free range, you have possibility of the animal at large issues and conflicts with other animals like dogs in the area, things of that nature that will become more disturbing. And then beyond that, what we simply recommend is to reiterate a lot of our existing regulations that I think already appropriately apply to this type of activity. So we've got a lot of animal regulations in the code already that apply generally to animals that would already prohibit the abuse of the chicken or allowing the animal to roam at large, things of that nature. We've already got some building code and other zoning code regulations that would apply to the installation of the chicken coop. So staff's recommendation is apply setbacks, same as you would for a shed or some other building. The risk, of course, there being one of fire transfer, right? You also have the odor concern, as I understand it, with chickens, and so perhaps the setback helps with that as well, although I think the scale, if I understand from talking to people who actually have chickens, because again, I'm not one of those people, so I don't know from my own experience, but the scale, I think, should help to reduce the odor. And of course, we already have existing nuisance regulations in the books that we could apply if the odor or something else, or even the noise reached a level of peace disturbance. We could apply those regulations in an enforcement capacity to address those situations were they to present themselves. And so again, as I said, and lastly there, we need to, those existing policies that apply to the school, we would need to reconcile that with whatever new regulation that we might craft from this point moving forward, if that's the council's desire. So just to kind of summarize, I think we can, if we kind of carefully regulate this in terms of scale, make sure the scale is appropriate, whether you choose just a maximum number of chickens per house or on however big your lot is, that determines something. But if you keep the scale appropriate, I think most people will be responsible in their behavior toward this. And if they aren't, I think we would have a regulatory regime that could help address nuisance type situations should they arise. I previously worked in a community that did allow for chickens in residential zoning district, and over the entire course of allowing that, I can't recall an instance in which it became problematic or reached a nuisance level. Again, the scale was regulated, so you couldn't have several dozen chickens in your backyard. I think that would inevitably become a nuisance at that scale. So that's the only experience I can draw from to offer to the council in terms of advice. So said a lot there. That's really kind of summarizes the assessment, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Ms. Graham, you have questions?
No, I'm just going to say, we spent almost an entire year fighting about this earlier. We have a whole set of regulations put together that addresses this and even more as far as this goes. I brought my chicken tonight, those of you. It's a rooster. It's a chicken, and maybe a rooster. We can't have roosters, it's a chicken. Okay, a very pretty one. I know the lady who's got the petition said she has over 600 signatures right now that people are in favor. Now, that doesn't mean that 600 people are going to have chickens. It just means 600 people or more saying, we don't care. There are already chickens inside the city limits, but they are in little pockets that are not annexed into the city. The mayor and I have one that isn't too far from either one of our houses.
Sure.
And I used to have one at the end of my street. I don't know where the chickens went. I think they finally got all run over because they got on a dry road. But I think this is something that would benefit an awful lot of people. I think that they're going to find out that they want to do this. It's going to take it's going to take a lot of time and energy. You can't just leave them for a week and expect them to behave themselves or to be fed and watered and taken care of. But, I mean, New York, Los Angeles, St. Louis, Kansas City, big towns in Texas, Springfield, all have chicken ordinances. In here, we won't let a town like ours that's got a lot of rural territory in it, they can't have them. I think it's something we should probably go ahead and do. When we did the one for the school, I told you at that time, I said, we need to just do this for the whole city, and you all said, oh, we'll just wait. So it's brought up again now, and those of you that have worked on this, and thank you so much, I think this is something we should just go ahead and do and pass and let people take care of, because again, we do have a whole ordinance put together that addresses everything that we could possibly encounter. Didn't we have in there they had to register with the city too?
Not sure. I don't think they had registered the individual chickens. I don't
No,
remember.
just that they were going to have them, I think.
I think
Darlene,
just
could you speak
because
into
you
the
have to have
mic
your
a little bit
coop
closer?
approved. Yeah.
Speak a little closer to the mic, please.
Oh.
Closer? You want me closer? Okay.
I think it was you had to have a permit to
Yeah.
to begin with, and then I don't think you had to register each individual chicken. It was just,
Yeah, just
the
to-
concept of having the coop and make sure that everything
Yeah.
was in place for the ordinance. Yeah.
But it was very well thought out, and it's very well laid out as far as what we can do, and it fits all of these requirements.
Ms. Graham, if you don't mind, Mr. President. Ms. Graham, we looked at the prior ordinance. Staff actually sat down and went through it line by line, and what we actually determined is that The majority of things on that last ordinance that was brought before council is already covered in other areas of the ordinance. So we would like to present council with a much more stripped-down version of that ordinance. Because again, as Mr. Tyson said, a lot of those things are covered in nuisances and animal ordinances and such as that. So I think we've kind of worked through that, and I think we're pretty confident that those things are covered elsewhere. So if council would like for us to bring back an ordinance, it'll be just a stripped-down version of probably what you had before.
I would like for us to go ahead with an ordinance for us to look at.
Like give Chief Campbell a chance to speak to the animal control issues of it. If nobody has any other questions for Mr. Tyson. Okay. Yeah, Chief, you could comment on that portion and then take it from there.
My granddaughter got them.
So from an animal control perspective, we're certainly not opposed to chickens in the city. I do think that we have the applicable ordinances to deal with them in a variety of issues that we would deal with as far as the nuisance complaints. At large, we have a facility that we would be able to use for temporary holding until we could reunite an owner and their chickens. And then if we ever needed to go outside of that, we would just utilize essentially the same things we talked about whenever we talked about the pig ordinance, which is there are people out there that specialize in those kinds of things, and we could certainly work with those kinds of groups to rehome them if we ever had to do that or anything of that nature. So we don't really share many concerns with urban chickens, and I think that, from a perspective of impact on our police department and the services, I don't believe that we'll have a lot of issue with it, much like the pig ordinance. It's passed, and I'm pretty confident saying we've had 0 calls for service. So,
Can you tag the pig or the chickens like you tag the pigs so that you can figure?
You can ban them.
Oh, you ban them? Yeah, that's right. You put little bands on there. That's very good. Okay. Any questions
They're easier
for
to catch than a pig.
catching them? Would be the problem. Yeah.
Well, a net, you can catch them with a net.
Capture's always the problem.
Any questions for Chief Campbell? Thank you, Chief.
No, thank you.
Yeah, if you can bring back your new ordinance next meeting, and we will discuss that then.
Absolutely. We'll bring that back for consideration. Just for clarification, I think last time we had a limit of 6. Is that still kind of where we'd like to see that? Okay.
Is that what the Springfield and
Yes.
Republic, and do you know what those are?
That's what most cities have, are 6.
I'm not sure.
The Missouri Municipal League model ordinance has 6 in it. I don't recall off the top of my head what Springfield and Republic have.
That's fine. All right, we'll move on to new business, tax-free weekend. Okay.
Sounds like fun.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. If you will recall, the City of Nixa passed a strategic plan in November of 2020, and part of that plan under the sustainable economy, one of the action plans was to participate annually in the Missouri back-to-school sales tax holiday. And so in order for us to do that, we have to enact an ordinance to opt in. When the legislation was first passed by the state of Missouri, cities, counties, and other taxing jurisdictions had to enact an ordinance to opt out, at which time the city of Nixa did. But to change your mind, all you have to do is enact an ordinance to opt in. And so if we so choose to do that, it will remain on the books until we opt out again. So the back-to-school sales tax holiday goes from the 12:01 a.m. on the first Friday in August, and it ends at midnight on the Sunday following. And it would just exempt, the state sales tax is exempt during that time for back-to-school items, clothing, computers, school supplies. There are certain limits, and I've included that in the memo. This page on the website shows some information. It gives a list of the the cities, counties, and districts that elected not to participate. So you can look at the list and see who all in your area does not participate. And currently, well, in 2020, Christian County did not, Ozark did not, Springfield did not, Branson did not, Nixa did not. So it could be, a boost to our local economy if we do choose to opt in. The surrounding communities may come here to shop. So that's part of the strategy in putting this under the sustainable economy of our strategic plan. So staff would like for you to consider that. We would need to let the DOR know 45 days in advance, which is about mid-June. So we would need to have the ordinance enacted before that date. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer anything.
Yeah, I think I brought this up last year, but it was too late. And then the strategic committee brought it up again. I think it's a good point. We never realized we could opt back in, or opt back, whichever way it is, right? So I remember when we opted out of it, when they first brought it up years and years and years ago. Do you have any concept on, what revenue impact this would have on the city?
I do not.
Very hard, yeah.
It would be hard to
Couldn't
know
imagine,
what portion of a taxpayer's revenue for is school supplies or clothing, or, I can look at different retailers and see what they contribute, but I wouldn't know that specific information, so I would not have any idea.
And so most food and other things like that aren't included. It's just mainly supplies for school,
It's clothing, school supplies, computer software, personal computers, computer peripheral devices, and graphing calculators.
Okay.
And there's limits on clothing. It can't be anything more than $100 per clothing item. There's limits, taxable value of $350 or less on computer software, computers not to exceed $1,500. So there are limits. And it has to be for school use. You can't just go out and buy a computer and say, I'm getting a tax. It has to be for school use.
Would our changing this, do you know if it would have an effect on the use tax concept? If you purchased a computer on Amazon or software from a software vendor directly that paid into our use tax?
It's sales tax, but it does include online purchases. Okay. So I'm not quite sure exactly the differentiation between that, because I looked on the frequently asked questions on here. Online sales do apply. Okay. But it's the use tax and sales tax are similar but different.
Very, very difficult, right? Yeah, I can imagine. Okay. Any other questions?
I was going to ask you about tracking. If we were to try this, would we be able to see the impact?
We could. We could possibly compare last year's, receipts for that time period with this year's receipts, and maybe make a correlation there. I don't know that you could directly correlate it, because there might be other factors that we wouldn't be able to tell. Like I said, there's no way for us to know specifically what retailers are paying their sales tax for, because it's only these certain items that are exempt. It's not everything.
Right, sure. I just didn't know if there would be a way we could see, the amount of stuff that was purchased or we didn't get tax on.
Right.
So,
I mean, if our city sales tax is 1.5%, so you could maybe come up with an extrapolation in your head. How much does the average family spend on school supplies, and maybe think about that in those terms. I don't know. They're expensive. I've got 3 children, and I've spent a lot on school supplies. So
those are 2, you bet.
It could be a good cost savings for our citizens.
Maybe we could ask Mr. Russell if he could reach out to Walmart and see if KIP has access to, maybe afterwards, in their reporting system based off of things that went under this particular stepping. At least reach out to him and ask him.
This is one of the biggest issues that we hear each and every year from the chamber, is that our businesses wish that this was in place. We have had those conversations, and it's not just if they do have to go out of town to go to Target to shop that weekend, then they're eating in town. They're eating in Springfield. They're not eating here, which does still generate your sales tax. We have had a lot of conversations over the last few years since I've been in charge of the chamber about this, and I think, I remember you and I did talk about it, and you said it was too late to bring it up last year, so I highly recommend that 1 weekend out of the year, Nixa's been good to us in the last year or two as we continue to see growth. I think in honor of our continued efforts to be vocal for Shop Local, I think this would be a great thing to do, and I'll check in with Kip and see if he can find out.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Russell. Any other questions? Thank you. Any further questions or discussions on that item? We'll move on to our next item, the electrical box wraps.
Mayor, Council, the Nixa Arts Council has been working on innovative ways to kind of display art across our community. One of the really cool ideas they came up with was painting our electrical boxes. And you've probably seen these electrical boxes alongside the roadways. We have small green ones, large green ones, which is actually a pretty cool idea. As you can see that Evan and Drew have brought up some examples of some of those electric boxes that have been painted in other communities. Originally, the idea came from the Arts Committee through the chamber, and they presented the idea of painting the boxes. Well, after some research, we recommended that instead the Arts Council actually submit art that can then be turned into a wrap. That these boxes would then be wrapped, and these actually that you see on the screen are actually wrapped boxes, not painted boxes. The difference being, if we were to paint a box, whenever it comes time to change that art or replace that box, we either have to sandblast the whole thing, or we have to buy an entire new box to replace that. And you can imagine in the case of something like vandalism or something like that, that can start to get pretty expensive. But instead, what we've been working with the chamber on is maybe entering into an agreement or a contract where the chamber would administer the wrap program. And so basically through the Arts Council, they would be submitting art to the city, and then the city could then turn that into a wrap and have that installed on the box. The wraps would actually, the art or the wraps themselves would have to be approved by the city to make sure that they're in conformance with our standards that we look for on city property. There's also some other concerns on boxes. There's some safety stickers and things like that Doug's crew has been fantastic on identifying those and making sure that when we do these wraps that they're actually able to work around those and wrap around those to ensure that those are still in place. By doing a wrap, if in fact that something was vandalized, or we would have the opportunity to actually rotate out that artwork with new artwork, we could then just take a box, have it rewrapped, and actually the turnaround would be very quickly, especially in a case of like vandalism or something like that. To the estimated cost, we did some research, and preliminary cost estimates were about $745 or so to wrap a large box, and about $465 to wrap the smaller ones. Staff has identified approximately about 5 boxes that we would actually like to start this program with. All those 5 boxes are located on North Main Street, basically from North Street north. Unfortunately, this idea originally started out as something for the downtown area, but what we discovered is we don't have any boxes in the downtown area. Those boxes are not owned by the city, so we don't have any control over those. But we do have some control over the ones to the north of North Street. So we've identified 5 to start with, and we would like council to consider having staff bring back that agreement for approval, as well as I would like council to consider doing a potential budget amendment. My recommendation would be, in the spirit of trying to display that art for the community, as well as bringing people into the commercial areas where we intend on displaying these for economic development purposes. I think that would be a great investment on the city if we were to partner with the Nixa Arts Council and actually pay for the wraps and have them installed. To do those 5 boxes initially would run about $3,500. I would recommend that we look at budgeting probably closer to $6,000. That way we have some money for vandalism and things like that if we have to replace those wraps sometime this year. And if this turns out to be a program that we find to be very successful, it is something that we can consider expanding in future years. So it would be kind of be a pilot program for us if we were to do something like this in conjunction with the Chamber and the Nixa Arts Council. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions?
What's the process look like to picking what's going on?
I'm sorry?
The process, what does it look like?
So the process we've been working on is that the chamber would be in charge of administering the program. So they would be in charge of getting the art together through the Arts Council, and that would be selected and then presented. Whatever art was chosen would be presented to the city in digital form. We would then have to approve that art, again, to make sure it's in compliance with our standards. And then at that point, we would actually, we have boxes in stock that we would actually take a box to the company to have it wrapped. And then once it's wrapped, we would take that box out and then just swap it out with the current box that's in place. And then we could take that box and we could have it wrapped and so forth. So we don't have to, which we were concerned about at first. We were concerned about having to wrap them on site and the safety issues because some of those are close to the roadway. What we've discovered is that it would be much easier just to take a box to the company or whatever company was choosing and then wrap it and then go have it installed. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Is this something we would have to put out for bid for a company?
Yeah,
or-
I'll have to check on the cost estimates, probably not. It would be under our bid, our bid amount, so, yep. Unless we were to expand the program, then we'd have to revisit that, but not at this time.
Now, would this include like control boxes for signals? And if so, would we have to reach out to MoDOT to?
Yeah, if
Or
it
proposed.
would include anything other than a city-owned box, that would have to be up to that entity to approve that.
Okay.
That's why we want to start with our boxes first and kind of see how the program works. And then as the future goes, we can kind of look at expanding that maybe to other boxes. Now, I will mention, because I don't think I mentioned this, we are looking at doing this only right now in commercial areas. And the reason being is because a lot of our boxes are located in residentials and in people's yards. And so to go in and wrap a box with something that somebody may or may not want in the middle of their yard. So we thought it best to at least start in the commercial area and attract people to that commercial area, especially for economic development purposes. Cool.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Great. Just for direction from council, would you like me to bring back
Yeah.
the contract and budget amendment both?
Yeah. go ahead and
Okay,
bring those
will do.
back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does the red light mean, yeah, the red light means it's on. I never can remember that, I'm sorry. Since your last meeting, staff, or I should say, Travis Cossey and Jason Stutzman did a lot of deep research on treating City of Nixa water with fluoride. One of the things that I had mentioned to you is I thought that this had been voted on by the public many years ago. As it turns out, in their deep research, that didn't take place. Actually, we don't even have minutes of a particular vote that says go fluoridate the water. In 1967, up until at least through 1982, we had a Board of Public Utilities. That group, or from looking at those minutes in May of '76, is kind of where this started. The Board of Public Utilities had a letter read at one of their meetings. They voted to basically start with installing the equipment to do fluoridation. In September of '77, evidently some discussion came up because there was a vote to put out an advertisement in the Nixa Enterprise to get public input. We never heard anything. There's nothing in any of the records what took place after that. The last mention in those minutes was in 1981, where Mr. Hill, who was the superintendent at the time, came in. He evidently had a letter from the Department of Natural Resources. We don't have a copy of what the letter said, but it had to do something with replacing some equipment, some fluoride equipment, and he was reporting to the board what the cost of that equipment was. They didn't take a vote, they didn't do anything, so I don't know what the detail of that was, whether the equipment eventually went down and then now they weren't adding fluoride, or whether, who knows what took place there. It could have been a number of things. In the last 18 years or so since I've been here, there have been a number of discussions off and on through the years where either a citizen or council may have a question about it, and there would be some discussion off and on. In the end, through all of those, the only thing we've ever done is we've reduced the input of fluoride to the minimum we possibly can. We basically have 4 locations where we input fluoride when we have pumps, and they're turned down as far as they can possibly go. So that's basically the limit to what it is that we do. We have natural occurring fluoride in our water. That varies a little bit in the amount, but the most recent one Mr. Stutzman took here a couple of weeks ago was 0.278 parts per million. There's no requirement under our operating procedures or operating permit through the Missouri DNR, state or federal. There are no requirements to add fluoridation. There aren't any requirements that says you can't. We do have an operating permit that requires our maximum be 4 parts per million. To my knowledge, at any time, we've never exceeded that. The highest I remember us seeing is a little over 2, and we recently had one as high as 2 back in 2019. Most of the time, it runs right around 1 part per million. The recommended amount by the Federal Department of Health and Human Services is 0.7, so a little less than what we have, but as I mentioned, we already have a 0.278 naturally occurring anyway, so we are still way on the bottom of, way below that 4 parts per million. Other action that we have had, we have received some funds from the Missouri Department of Health and Human Services. We had 2 grants that Milton Dickensheet wrote that council had approved to replace some equipment, some fluoride. One of those was in 2015 and one was in 2017. So in a nutshell, that's kind of all of the information I have on how we got to where we are today. There is legislation that was passed in 2016 that basically says if we were to change, now this would be for any public water system, if you wanted to start adding fluoride or you wanted to stop the program you already had going, we are required to notify the DNR, the customers, and the Department of Health and Human Services on the state level at least 90 days in advance. There's also a current bill in the legislature that's being considered that would add that we would be required to bring in the local health department and provide their report. It doesn't say in detail what that report would be, maybe their opinion or their recommendation, I don't know. So for right now, that's basically everything that we know of and how we got to where we are today. Be happy to answer any other questions you might have or take any direction you might have for the future.
Any questions? I did have Dr. Leary, who come and spoken to us the last time, long time ago, when we talked about fluoride on behalf of I think it was the Greene County Dental Society, or one of the, might have been Ozarks Regional, whatever the dental societies for this area. And so she reached out and said that they would like to send someone else if we decide to move down this road to speak on what they believe the benefits of fluoridation are. So what would be our process if we wanted to change that, besides this, well, along with that legal process from the state?
As far as
is it just operational? Do we have to have a resolution?
I believe it's operational where you would vote to stop and we would do our notices.
It's up to how formal council wants. I mean, if council wanted to send just direction, you could do a resolution. Those aren't very durable, though. You could do an ordinance. I mean, there would be multiple ways to address this issue, and it would just be council's prerogative on how it wanted to proceed.
Okay, so we just go through a standard ordinance procedure.
Ordinance or resolution, it's whatever you want. Ordinance would be law. You could declare by law that we will do this, or the water department shall do this, or shall not do this. Or if you just wanted to do direction, a resolution is the way that you can have a writing that evidences council's administrative direction to staff. So like I said, it's just kind of whatever council's preference would be on that. There's no legal requirement to do it either way. It's more like an administrative issue. So like, city staff and the water department just kind of get to do it unless council tells us otherwise to do it a certain way. Does that make sense?
Sure. So your current recommendation as staff would be to continue to fluoridate the water?
It's our we're on both sides of it. We can see the advantage of it, At the same time, we see the cost. I can tell you fluoride's very rough on equipment. We spend about $10,000 or so a year to add fluoride. The amount that's naturally occurring is considerably under the recommended amount, but it's close and it does fluctuate. So there are times where we have time regulating it down to that amount, to that recommended amount, obviously. But, you know, we can continue as we always have. It's what we've done. At least anybody that's here today has always done exactly what we're doing today. And it's just a matter, it's more of a budgetary or a financial issue with us. So, but to stop it, as Mr. Woodman said, we would need to, you know, have some form of legislative action from you, and then we would need to meet those requirements of 90-day notices and that type of thing. So it's not like we could turn it off the day after, you know, you pass something.
Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I would really like to get some input from some dental professionals as to what they say about this, because they're the ones who really are the forefront. My kids are older, so I don't know if they still put fluoride treatments on kids' teeth, but I know my kids were little, the dentist put fluoride treatments on their teeth because it kept cavities from forming if they stayed out of candy and stuff. But I think it'd be worth our while to at least hear what they have to say.
Sure, yeah.
There's
Dr.
pros
Leary
and
presented that
cons.
20 years, or 10 years ago, it was still the recommendation to fluoridate water. So maybe, have you gotten any idea from other local water systems if they're still doing it or not?
Well, there are a number that are. There are several that have recently stopped. As a matter of fact, Ozark stopped within the last couple of years. I don't know the details of why they did that, but I do know they did. But it's a 50-50 camp out there. I've talked to a number of people at MPUA, and it's about a 50-50 people that still do it, or people that have never done it.
Bring
It's more
in
of a local
presenter
preference.
I'd
From
still
the
like to hear from-
Dental Association
Yeah,
to speak,
just
kind
to
of what
see what they
what
have
the
to
current
say.
best practices are and stuff, and then,
Yeah,
like I said, we don't have to follow that necessarily,
No.
but it gives you good information.
I think we're fortunate in that we have
Somebody
water that has the tendency to be naturally fluoridated. I know when we first moved to Nixa, that was one of the things that we went, oh, that's terrific. So if
We
we
can
stop,
certainly
it's not
bring
going to be
somebody
that big of a loss,
you'd like.
but I'd still like to hear from them, just to have a professional tell us.
Because I think, we can look, I think Dr. Austin had also reached out about speaking about that, and so we can have, you know, either him or somebody from the Dental Society come and speak, kind of just what the current best practices are recommended.
We'll do it.
All right. All right. And that is it. Anything else from staff?
Mayor and council, this afternoon I received an email from Kay Brown, the Christian County clerk, and she did the certification of the election today and mailed out those results. And so we will be swearing in our new council members at the next regular council meeting.
All right, very good.
Mayor, I have one quick item that kind of came late this evening. When we were all leaving and heading out, we realized that there was a crane set up in the middle of Tower Street blocking the street. It's a communication company for the cell tower equipment that's on that tower. So we kind of put the curb to them. They didn't get any permission from us. We didn't coordinate any street closures or anything like that. So they've moved it for the evening. They do need to be here off and on for the next couple of days, and so we'll work with them, work with Mr. Douglas to get some information out, make sure we can get traffic through there. It's not a highly traveled street during the middle of the week, I don't think, but anyway, if you hear anything about it, it kind of came late to us, and I apologize we weren't able to get the information out sooner, but we just found out today.
Anything else from anybody else?
Would you like to do new portraits for the council at our next meeting as we swear in our new council members and do new portraits for the council?
I think let's hold off a little bit. Until we do them outdoors, then we can look at that in May, I think.
Okay.
Anything else from council?
I'll let you go first.
I just wanted to mention that on Saturday, the 24th, I will be with Officer Brent Forgy doing the drug take-back event at Walgreens from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. To accept any prescription or over-the-counter unused drugs. And it's our spring event, and so if you have anything to drop off, we'll be there to take it.
Very good. Anything else?
Yeah, I got a few things. So basically, I did want to respond to the recall committee kind of before we end tonight's meeting. I've sat here and I've been quiet and I've listened to you guys, and I'd appreciate the same courtesy. So I've listened to comments, talking about how it's okay if old people die because no one lives forever. I've listened to an individual say that they'll contract COVID and cough on our mayor as a way of asking the mayor how confident he is with masks. I've seen comments that seem to mislead the public on a variety of issues since the committee has started attending these meetings. And so I did want to say, Mr. Sanders, you once said at a meeting that we as leaders, and you pointed everyone in yourself, need to be open and honest with the public, and I do agree with that statement. I do want to preface that before I launch into my thoughts about recall. So recall should be rare. It should be used in the most extreme circumstances, and I don't believe this is that one. Fiscally, I believe it's a waste of taxpayer money. I believe it's a waste of staff's time. I believe it's a waste of poll workers' time. And if it's voted down, I think it'll be a waste of everyone's time. However, I know you guys are going to go forward with recall, so I just ask that your campaign be honest with the facts. And if you have misinformation, that you'll be willing to issue retractions to those statements. Some examples of past misleading statements are as follows. So he, being Mayor Steele, in regard to the Oaf property, allowed the purchase of land from a plumbing contractor that has a special interest in donating land to his company, or so his company can underbid other people by using his tax write-offs from the donations of his property to the city. The mayor just did that, quid pro quo. I'll give you a big tax break, and then I'll give you city contracts to build sidewalks and install pipes as we expand. That was an early reason for recall. Another on the same issue, the O family donated a bunch of land to the city. They will receive an $800,000 plus tax write-off, and at the same time, they're able to underbid contracts from the city. So when educated on how our bidding process actually works and that this wasn't the case, there was no retraction to that statement. You assumed illegal activity and misled the public based on your assumptions. Then another one, instituting a mask mandate, and I'm using ellipses here just to add context, greatly affects the amount of CARES Act money they receive. This was a comment on Sunday, March 21st, in the Committee to Recall the Mayor of Nixa, Missouri's Facebook page. The question I have, and this is a rhetorical question, is how many times do we have to say that the mask mandate was in no way tied to the CARES Act before that information is stopped? We have addressed this issue multiple times, but I still see it pop up over and over again. So I just want to repeat myself to be very clear that the mask mandate is in no way tied to the City of Nixa's access to the CARES Act money that we received. And I hope that there is a retraction issue to that misleading statement. Moving forward, the mayor decided to label citizens non-essential. That was the Committee to Recall the Mayor of Nixa, Missouri. This is a false statement. Who is classified as essential versus non-essential was established in the stay-at-home order issued by Governor Parson on April 3rd, 2020. I have it right here. Well, so that is binding to all citizens who live in the state of Missouri. There have been multiple statements regarding the stay-at-home order the mayor issued, but I can clear those up by saying that we had to follow the governor's order. Variations of that order could mean the city could issue a more restrictive order, but not a less restrictive order. The mayor's order largely matched the order issued by the governor. So as a rhetorical question, why are you not focusing your efforts on the governor instead? And that's a rhetorical question. And it's about wanting to tie the mayor to things that are outside of his control. Now that you know this, I hope to see a retraction on that statement as well. We are going to see our local government make decisions about vaccines. Do you want one person to be able to label people based on vaccines and ban people from being in public if they're not vaccinated? That was the committee to recall the mayor of Nixa, Missouri. So this is a rhetorical and reflective question. I just want to know how you arrived at that conclusion, because no one has commented on that issue. And I can easily speak for everyone, I think, up here in saying that no one in Nixa is going to be banned in Nixa public spaces unless they have a CDC vaccination card. That without any supporting evidence, I just don't understand how you reached that decision. And finally, the rumors coming out of City Hall were that they were deciding what products were going to be allowed to be sold in the stores. This was on Nick Reed at minute 24 and 53 seconds in. This is something that was never considered. And I don't know who you heard that rumor from, but it could have been cleared up in 1 second had you called anyone on council to know that this wasn't the case. Yet, I hear it on Nick Reed, and I really hope that that false information doesn't continue. Now let's kind of talk about the consequences of consistently misleading statements. So this false information has led council members to be threatened and council members' children to be bullied in school based on false comments made on Facebook. You have the power to make sure that kids aren't being bullied. I know there are people on council whose kids, parents had to be called in because of comments made, and that's unacceptable. So just please keep that in mind next time you post something. Ronald Reagan once said, "The person who agrees with you 80% of the time is a friend and an ally, not a 20% traitor." Though Mayor Steele and I have disagreed at times, I consider him a friend and an ally. If we look outside the realm of COVID, I truly believe your committee would agree with Mayor Steele on 80% of the issues as well. And I know that this group is hyper-partisan and wants to push Nixa to be hyper-partisan, both in terms of council members having a D or an R behind our names, and in terms of policy. Now, I say that because I often see, and I think that the committee thinks we're very liberal on council, and I can assure you that's not the case. And we have individuals across the entire range up here that provide unique perspectives to help move us forward. It really frustrated me to see that not 10 minutes after Councilwoman-elect Hoogstraat, and I hope I pronounced your name right, won a fair and free election, and there are already calls for recall against her simply because people don't agree. I can guarantee that we will likely disagree on issues. I've disagreed with pretty much everyone up here at one time or another. But I will support the election results as well, should she face recall, and I will stand by her 100%. And additionally, if you would like me to specifically provide a list of every Republican organization I've been a part of, I will be happy to provide that as either an employee or a volunteer, and just please ask for it in the next visitor section. I will do that. The gavel he has right there is from my time as being the college Republican president of MSU. So, it really pains me because I feel like your group wants to see us disagree more and more on council instead of moving forward. Yet you fail to understand that when an ordinance is proposed, it includes council emailing and calling staff with questions about the ordinance, proposing amendments, talking one-on-one about the ordinance until the ordinance is in a position where everyone is comfortable with its passage. Our jobs don't stop when we walk out these doors. And with that, if you're on staff, council, or incoming council, I just want you to raise your hand if you went to Nixa Public Schools growing up. I did. I was there kindergarten to senior year. I want you to raise your hand if you remember the Mazios that used to be at the Shanghai buffet location. I went there for lunch after church almost every Sunday. I want you to raise your hand if you remember Nixa before Walmart. I do. I want you to raise your hand if you remember Nixa having a Dairy Queen. My mom was super excited when she saw one so close to where we were going to be living. Yeah. Everyone who has had their hand raised has a deep history with Nixa. And they love this community, and we've chosen positions to enhance this community. The mayor has a strong love for Nixa, as do I, and wants to see it grow. In fact, as mayor, he's overseen some of the most rapid growth the city has ever witnessed. He has overseen a strong economy that has put us in a position to have a consistent surplus every single year. I have an immense amount of respect for him, and I will strongly support him against recall should it move forward. I want to condemn this recall in the harshest terms possible, and I'm super concerned that it will upend the growth our community has seen. Nixa existed before the pandemic, and it will exist after the pandemic. I just want to make sure that we're not focused on Nixa during the pandemic. because that's short-sighted. So with that, I finish my thoughts.
Thank you, Councilman Orr. See if the rain calms down here for a second. Anything else from council? Taking off of his comments and moving on to, thank you very much for your comments. I appreciate that very much. We will move on. I wanted to bring up our revenue surplus. Good thing to talk about after Mr. Orr presented it. So over the last, how many years? Jimmy, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years, I don't know.
About
But
4 or 5
for,
years.
most of my term as mayor, we have had a revenue surplus each year, and so, and then based off that, we have decided to earmark some of those funds for specific purposes. The largest being our park fund, which is, I think, Jennifer can correct me, 2.5 million, something along those lines. She's looking through all her sheets of paper, trying to figure out where she's at. So this year, based off of the incredible increase of revenue we saw due to people staying home from the pandemic and the cut in expenses we had because we were trying to be very careful about what we were doing during the pandemic, we actually, according to my numbers, and I'll let Jennifer correct me, but that we had expected to have a surplus of $412,000, somewhere in that range, based off our revenue versus expenses. Some of that's used for capital improvement projects, some of it's used for debt reduction, other things. But in the end, so that was $10.6 million in revenue and $10.2 million in operating expenses for the administrative fund. And we ended up with $11.6 million in revenue and $9.8 roughly million in operating expenses. Am I kind of close? She's looking.
You're just looking at the administration.
Just the administrative fund.
Close enough.
Close, okay. So that leaves us with about $1.4 million in surplus revenues for this year, over the expected surplus that we were already going to have. So we had a total of $1.8 million. We expected to have $400,000. We ended up with $1.4 million. So I wanted to take council's direction on what things we might want to do with this money. I think Chief Campbell has some ideas. Jimmy has some ideas. A large one of them being a big gun range on a hill somewhere that we could use part of this money for. I think Jimmy would also like to have some maybe just put back into our operations nest egg just because we don't exactly know what's going to happen as we move away from the pandemic and kind of see where our tax revenues move from there. I would also push for our economic development fund, the site's left, but to replenish some of the funds that we had taken from that for the Wasson projects, and also to add for our park funds for our new Parks Master Plan, to implement parts of our new Parks Master Plan that Matt had brought to us. Does anyone have any comments or thoughts on that? You want to bring it back for discussion at the next meeting, or?
I'd say yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So why don't you guys decide what you would like to do with it, and then bring that back for discussion at the next meeting, and we will discuss what we should do with that.
Yep, we will definitely come back with some recommendations, and I think Jennifer will be ready as well to talk about those expenses, or surplus.
All right, very good. All right, anything else from council? Mr. Peterson.
I would make a motion that we go into closed executive session pursuant to sections 610.0213 and 13 for RSMO, so that council may discuss hiring, firing, disciplining, or promotion of an employee and discuss individually identifiable personnel records, performance ratings, or other records pertaining to the employee. I also move that this closed executive session records related thereto and any votes taken by council during this section be closed pursuant to section 610.021 RSMO, and that the city council shall stand adjourned at the conclusion of the closed executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Second.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Justin Orff,
Yes.
Scott Perryman.
Yes.